Welcome to another episode of the Three Man Weave College Basketball Podcast. We are the Three Man Weave. I'm Jim Root. I'm hosting this week as we go through the Big 12. That's more to come later. Kai, you are with me here today. Kai McEwen. We also have the newly chopped hair, Matthew Cox, a fresh new look for the offseason, ready to show off for the summer. Matt, are you feeling lighter without all that hair?
Like a feather, Jim. Yeah, it was time. Long overdue. Matty Burnsides, Kai will make a comeback at some point, but it was time for him to go into exile, at least for a time being. So yes, the summer dew is out.
Burnsides.
How are you feeling over there?
I'm feeling good. I'm wearing the spinny hat, Jim. For those familiar with our gambling shows, the spinny hats come out on Saturdays usually. But Jim, I felt it was necessary to bring out today because our K-State preseason takes were pretty spinny.
They were bad. Whatever other adjective you want to use for them, they were terrible, sad to listen to. And we will appropriately roast ourselves coming up later in the episode. But first, quick shout out to Jay Pitty for the opening tunes. Our guy Joe Paskoff out there in NYC. Subscribe to the pod on iTunes, SoundCloud, wherever you get your podcasts. Leave a review if you so please. We love to get those. And Kai, we have a couple this week, so hit the folks with them.
We do. Sloggy Log says, love the pod. Fellas, love the pod. I'd like to provide my personal Weave takes power ratings. This is good here. Matty, the most entertaining for the off-the-wall takes he provides. Jim has the most rational takes, even though you board bet his Georgetown Hoyas. Kai tops my power ratings as I trust his takes most. Hooray. That's awesome. He has a question.
A well-rounded character of sorts is what he's trying to call you, Kai.
Exactly. And he's exactly right. He has a question about Ed Cooley. It's rumored he will be working with a very nice pile of NIL money. Do you think an upgrade in talent will be enough for him to break through what we call the Cooley zone? Or do you think it's more of the same we saw at Providence? Jim, we kind of talked about that on the Big East pod, but yeah, the ceiling is higher, I suppose, at Georgetown.
Yeah, I don't think it's auto where the Cooley zone suddenly shifts up to like 20 to 60 instead of 40 to 80. But I think he will have seasons where he peaks through that ceiling. Like, Kai, in the third matrix, they go above the clouds and they're like, whoa, it's beautiful up here because they blotted out the sun. As an obscure reference for you. But that's what it's going to feel like, getting just outside above the Cooley zone and viewing Matt into top 25 territory and really like, I don't know, maybe, I don't think they'll really ever be title contender, but maybe Final Four contender. They've done it before.
Yeah, it's just a new Cooley zone. As Jim said, just kind of raises it. And then he has like the once every 7 year upside comet shot. But yeah, I don't think it's like some drastic, revelation for that program. No, I don't.
Next review, Jay Swiftly, who is a multiple reviewer here. He must have accidentally hit the 4-star button. Jay Swiftly, you hit 4 stars.
I feel like he's done this before. I feel like he's kind of a rebel out there without a cause.
It's too quick. You need to double check the click because I'm sure you meant 5 stars because we are your favorite independent college basketball podcast for sure. Right, Jay Swiftly? Okay, anyways, he says award season. Hey, fellas. And he even says we're the 3 most informed people in college basketball. That's amazing. Wow, amazing. Do you think an award episode would be a good episode? Example, best transfer fit, coaching upgrade, etc. Could be good off-season material that reflects the perennial nature of the game with the transfer portal expanding off the court. I think it's a great idea, Jim. I would call it an amazing idea if it was a 5-star review.
Yeah, exactly. Just need that one extra star for it, Kai. Yeah. But we do have an empty couple of weeks in the summer in our content plan. So I think fitting some sort of award pod in there, we just got to be creative with the awards, be a little more off the wall. Like he said, with Matt's crazy takes or the previous reviewer said, got to find some off the wall awards to give out. I think that would be a solid content idea.
That's it.
Okay, great. Thanks for the comments, guys. Leaving me hanging out there. Much appreciated. Hey, nothing happening in the personal corner. We've recovered from Charleston, but we're pumped for Memorial Day weekend. Hopefully everybody out there kicks off their summer with a great day. Kai's having a little cookout for us on Sunday. I'm pumped. Mr. McEwen on the smoker, the Traeger. That's what you got, right?
The Traeger, the old Traeger. Yeah. It pretty much does itself. It's hard to mess up. It's really the Traeger. It's not me.
Yeah, Kai's not super talented on the grill. We'll give the machine all the credit. Hey, check out the website. Not much happening there in terms of writing, but if you like shirts, maybe find those. Home Field also has our shirts on their site. All right, guys, let's get into Root's Roundup. That's right, Roots Roundup. We're talking news and notes, folks. Starting off with George Washington has selected their new nickname, no longer the Colonials because of whatever perception that surrounded that. Matt, I'm going to say this is better than the Beacons. Sorry, Valpo, but
yes.
The Revolutionaries isn't a full Grand Slam. This is kind of like a ground rule double to me. I like it. I don't love it.
I'd give it a single, maybe. It just this like swath of bad names, Kai, that have come out recently. I think it's harder to come up with a cool, newer name. Like the older names will always have more of like equity in our minds, but we got to do better than some of these kind of gimmicky type names. It feels very XFL-y, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It does sound like an XFL team. It's exactly right. Well, Jim, the one that I loved and you loved as well, the Blue Fog. It should have been the Blue Fog. Yeah. That was the best name. The Revolutionaries is silly. It's a silly name, in my opinion.
I don't know if it's.
I don't like it.
It kind of created our country as to George Washington. I don't know. Really dislike it. I'm okay with it, but I don't think it was the number one option. Like Kai said, Blue Fog would have been top shelf, elite, unique. I love the team names that don't end in S, which I guess is maybe a WNBA thing for me because there's like 7 of them in that league. But yeah, Blue Fog was just perfect, Kai. I'm sad it got left on the cutting room floor.
Indeed.
Recruiting news. 2023, a couple of commits out there. 4-star point guard Tyler Johnson headed to Louisville. Kai, Kenny Payne has discovered this phenomenon called guard play and guards, and he's actually getting a few on his roster. How about that?
How about that? And 2023, Jim. So by my count, that's this season. So
2023,
wow.
Yes. If I said 24,
no. I'm just surprised that he's heard the feedback and he's wrangling guards, and we'll see. We'll see what we get from Louisville this season. Might take more than a freshman guard, but good step.
Yeah, man, I know last, or maybe the ACC pod, we speculated whether he'd be there in 2025. And I don't know. A lot's going to come down to this year and showing any sort of progress from the dismal campaign that was last year.
Yeah, he'll be done next summer. So it's just yeah, that's where that's going.
Pitt got a commitment from 4-star center Papa Kante. He quickly signed, and I think part of that, and there's speculation that has to do with Alabama would have been potentially in the market for him because of Charles Bediako going pro, which we'll discuss a little bit more later in the roundup. But a big time grab here for Pitt, 4-star fringe top 100 guy. I don't know how much he plays right away because they've got Federico, they've got the Diaz-Graham brothers that flashed some potential last year, but you just want to keep that talent pipeline going, Mr. Capel, although I don't know, maybe he'll end up in the portal if he doesn't play this year. We'll see. That's kind of the day and age of the game we're in here. Georgia Tech got 4-star power forward Bae Ndongo, also fringe top 100 here. I wanted to bring this up kind of tangentially, Matthew, because I saw a little outpouring of, there's been a lot of criticism of Joe Mazzulla in the Boston Celtics series against Miami Heat, which has led to the pushback of, well, it's always been a little bit downhill since Damon Stoudemire left, which just kind of reinforces that we think this is a home run hire for Georgia Tech, correct?
Yeah, I'm kind of worried that the cat's getting out of the bag on Stoudemire might be a really good coach. I think we took him for granted that first year at Pacific, but then kind of watching what Pacific has done in the wake of his absence to multiple, clues that point to decent basketball coach. Kai.
He's a great coach. I thought it was a home run hire at the time. I still do.
I believe the year after he left Pacific, they were the worst against the spread team in the entire country, like 5-26 against the spread. So whether that's all Stoudemire or not, I think there's something in there of where the program could not sustain the level without him. And that seems to be a benefit for Georgia Tech going forward because they're going to get the bump there. UCLA got a Slovenian point guard, Jan Vide. It's my best guess at the pronunciation. Highly regarded coming over from professional ranks over there. They've gone very international with their bench. I was looking through that today. They've got some freshman recruits coming in from the States, but a couple of international flavor going on there. And hey, it's gone well for another Pac-12 school, Arizona. So, and of course, Gonzaga over there on the West Coast. Kai, seems like a pretty good route. Why not? The talent seems to be for the picking overseas.
Smart. People are finally figuring it out. Gonzaga and St. Mary's have been doing it for 20 years, and now they're finally figuring it out. Good job.
Yep. Yes, indeedy. And in the class of 2024, Georgia got a 4-star center, Thomas Sorber. Well done, Mike White. He's recruited really well since he's gotten there. Floor raiser, as we have said repeatedly, that's what he does. Transfer news, some worth mentioning here since our last pod. The aforementioned Arizona Wildcats stayed domestic for Keyshawn Johnson, forward from the national runner-up San Diego State Aztecs. Matthew seems to slot perfectly in their lineup. They didn't have the athletic four-man that fit into that kind of too big approach. They were going to be playing like really, really Twin Towers approach with Vasar, the sophomore. I like this for him. More athleticism, more versatility. They want to play fast, so having a more up-tempo, capable big makes sense.
Arizona, geez, a little lump in the old throat there, Kai. Bradley and Johnson, two late massive gets for this Arizona team. Like that roster looked really thin for a little bit. And then now you look at the Bradley Johnson era of what this looks like, and it looks like another really good team in Tucson this year.
Yeah, I don't know if it's quite the elite 1 or 2 seed that they've been the last 2 years, but I think top of the Pac-12 was still within the realm of possibility, competing with your USCs, your UCLAs, your Oregons, who, speaking of Kai, brought in Jesse Zarzuela. I don't know how I feel about this in terms of a Pac-12 player. This is his 6th school in 5 years. Yes, that is correct. That's somehow a stat. He's been all over the map. He's been great at lower levels, Kai. I don't know if he's a Pac-12 player.
I don't think so. Although when he was out of the lineup, Coppin State struggled a lot. He's like one of the most important. And Central Michigan too. Both teams. He's hurt a lot. That's a good takeaway. He's hurt a lot. It's a lineup check every time with him. Both teams struggled a lot, especially Central Michigan last season when he was out. But however, I don't think he's a Pac-12 guy. No.
Yeah, Kai issuing the correction for the chat. Sorber going to Georgetown, not Georgia. There you go, folks.
Good catch, Justice Mitchell.
Yep. Oregon was a bonehead move by me. Go ahead, Matt.
Oregon, a lot of quantity. Like Altman's kind of like just feels like he's kind of grasping for straws. Some of these recent transfer classes he's gotten, they just don't pack the same punch that we're used to seeing. Is that a bad take?
No, I don't think so. And you'd think they'd have like a wealth of NIL money.
Yeah, right. Like the most.
And it's just,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But there's a couple, Matt. Some of these, I don't want to call Dana Altman aging, but he is a little more older guard. Like we talked about it with Moser on the preseason Big 12 episode, and I think we'll mention it again here. Just some of the classes lack the pop and feel more like I'm trying to figure this portal thing out as I go.
I guess he does have 2 5-stars and a top 40 guy coming in. So not many schools can say that. I just think it's the 5-star thing is relatively less valuable in this COVID era than it was 4 years ago. So we'll see if that fades, but it's kind of what it is right now.
Yeah. It's interesting that they've shifted maybe more resources towards freshmen. And that's why their transfer portal gets aren't quite really the highest of caliber that we're used to seeing. Aziz Bandago going from Utah Valley to Cincinnati. That's right. Big 12 Cincinnati, who we'll discuss on this podcast. Kai, he is going to be a very big test case for the mental health waiver, because when he went in the portal, he made sure to mention it. I would imagine he was advised to mention it. I don't know whether his mental health struggles are real or not. I'm assuming they are. I think that's the right, true until proven not, I guess. But this is the big home run thing that people are going for to get immediate eligibility on a second transfer. And Bandago will be a big part of that, having already transferred once to Utah Valley and not graduated.
Yeah, we'll see. The NCAA has a lot of decisions to make. And if there's anything we know about the NCAA, though, Jim, is that they will be consistent. They will apply the ruling on a timely basis and the same across all situations.
That's the big thing. Let's get it done timely, right, Matt? Like, can we know before October 1st whether all these guys are eligible? Even September 1st. I don't know how much time it takes to review these.
Or like, hey, you're number 150 in the queue. We may not get to you. Like at least so there's like some specificity around the uncertainty, Kai. I don't know.
Hire us. I don't understand. Why does this take so long? Hire us. You're good.
Hey,
you're not good.
Kai wants to work in compliance. I love it. Let's
give
get
us
him out there.
Give us the criteria. You're good. You're not good. Boom. Done. Next.
Caleb Love is decommitted from Michigan. Worth mentioning, just because of the hullabaloo, the fanfare that surrounds Caleb Love and everywhere he goes. We don't know where that's going to be. Matthew, both of our honors, Kai and Matt, are in the mix, or at least have been discussed previously. I believe we're finalists for him before the Michigan commitment. Not sure Mizzou has the room or the NIL money at this stage. Matthew, are your Hoosiers going to step in there for Caleb Love?
I kind of hope not. I feel like a lot of IU fans want to take the swing, and I get why. I think there's some upside given IU's roster and balance, Kai. As an IU fan, someone who comes from sort of the partially pompous academia of the Big Ten. I wonder if Indiana fans will not be happy if they let Caleb Love into IU after he did not qualify for Michigan. So you could see the Michigan fans getting on their high horse and snuffing their noses at IU and the Kelly grad brethren, I suppose.
IU considers itself a better academic school.
I just within Michigan. The Big Tens, I think there's a very serious academic competition thing. That's like a real thing. It's really stupid and annoying. Like, it's real.
Would you rather have the guy get in or like Terrence Shannon not get in and then go to your conference rival? Like,
yeah, that's tough.
So Shannon was Michigan too, right?
Yes.
And Nojel Eastern tried to go to Michigan as well from Purdue. Yes. Denied. Hey, credit to Michigan, man. I like keeping the standard there.
It's becoming a thing though, where Michigan fans are like, is Juwan Howard screwed in the portal era because the guys transferring have a much harder time getting in than freshmen. Like the way the credits transfer over doesn't really work. And if it's like such a portal building world, is Michigan just going to be left behind? That's the concern. I think a lot of Michigan fans are voicing that.
You don't want to turn into like
always going to do.
Yes, I think Duke's the exception. I think there's more of like the Stanfords where the academic reputation actually works against you. Like the
only schools that choose to enforce it.
Yeah, well, I just think that the type of guys you get there too, it's just like it's not always. Like they're very academic focused. We talked about like how the whole Harvard Yale thing. I don't know. It's just a weird situation. It's a tough spot for Michigan, obviously.
Yep. Yes, indeed. Another school with elite academic standards, Howard. They brought in Seth Towns. Makes sense here. A guy who started in the Ivy at Harvard. Man, it does harken back to Nojel Eastern, aforementioned there. Somebody that was thought to be always like a shoe-in for MEAC Player of the Year at Howard. But he never really got on the court. And we don't know if Towns is going to be on the court. He started playing college back in 2016. He has sat out 4 of the past 7 years. It's really remarkable that he still has eligibility. But I mean, if he's playing, he is older than everybody else and far more talented. So this is a big swing, high risk, high reward. I guess maybe low risk for Howard. High reward, though.
He was player of the year in 2018, the Ivy, wasn't he? Something like that.
That was 6 years ago.
Yeah. And being 26 in college is a huge advantage in terms of basketball, just evolution. Obviously, he's been hurt his entire career, but you're 26. That's a huge leg up. Yeah. We'll see if he plays. Remember when people were ranking Howard top 100 when they had Makur and Eastern? Everyone's like, oh, top 100 Howard.
Yeah, they had a home run year last year and they didn't crack the top 200. So it's just really, really hard to do from that level. I'm skeptical we see 30 games of Towns, but hey, we were skeptical we'd see 30 games of Keontae Johnson, and we will dunk on ourselves again later talking K-State. Last one to mention here, Lance Ware to Villanova from Kentucky. Just wanted to bring this up because I think the bidding war, quote unquote, that happened behind the scenes here, much rumored, for somebody who barely played for Kentucky, is just a statement on where the portal is at right now. Like for Rutgers, now what's his name? Cam Spencer just entered the portal and is like, every school is on him. Every blue blood, everybody wants him because a starter quality player entering the portal right now is just crazy. People are really chasing whoever could possibly contribute, and Ware seemed to benefit from that. And Villanova now has a bench big, but I don't know how much he moves the needle.
Yeah, I mean, I think business-wise, these guys are learning probably that it's better to wait, right? Yes. Like Cam Spencer probably made himself an extra, I don't know, $50,000 just by waiting the premium of the
better
whatever
school too, probably.
So, and better school. So I get it. I think we'll see more of this late, like next year after, like guys learning from this. And I think it's more annoying for us because then we have to track these roster movements late in the cycle. But yeah, I'm with you, Jim. Sort of an overreaction in terms of impact here.
Yeah, it's you've created more demand, right, Kai? Like there's just not that many players out there, and now suddenly everybody wants / needs you.
Yeah, everyone goes in at first, and people whiff on their preferred guys, and now they're like, "Oh no, we got to get somebody." Cam Spencer, wow, okay, yeah, we'll give you everything. We have all this NIL money stashed up that we thought we were going to use in other players. I actually kind of like Ware to Villanova here. They need big guys. He was a top 150 guy. I'm not giving him shade for not playing Kentucky because Calipari does weird things with rotation. Who was the guy that Wilcher went to Gonzaga and became an All-American and barely played for Kentucky? So I'm not going to demerit him for that.
I agree with Kai and Jim. Real quick,
Juzang did
Juzang. Yeah. Come on. I also agree. I think Spencer will be good too. I think Spencer will be solid. So as much as I just went on that rant, I think he will actually be a good player.
Yeah. Oh, Spencer's fantastic. I have got the building cleaning garbage outside of my window again, so I'll be muting periodically. And if you hear that in the background, again, my apologies to the listeners. I wrote surprising draft decisions in here. We're going to try to keep this to ones that like were expected to come back but went pro, or were expected to go pro and came back. So not a ton to mention here, but Bediako for Alabama is the first one right off the bat. Was expected to be the anchor of their defense once again, especially with Noah Clowney already for sure going pro. Man, the Tide are really lacking in the paint now, Matthew. It is Nick Pringle time. They're going to have to pop that can and hopefully don't stop. There's Pringle's joke. Yeah, Kai caught on. I'm concerned about the Tide though, Matt. That roster doesn't have the same oomph as it has had in the past.
Yeah, it doesn't have depth. I think depth's been their real strength. Not because how fast they play and the depth they need, but just the insurance contingency policy it gives you for injuries and optionality to find optimal lineups throughout the year. So that's just a real weapon. I think Oates has weaponized, and yeah, it's what a 7-man roster right now, I guess.
You better hope Quinterly comes back. Otherwise,
yeah,
I'm not sure you're a tournament team.
Yeah, that's why they've got a lot of chasing to do still in the portal, just guys to fill roles. Kai, we talked about some of the guys that Texas filled their bench with that I wasn't a huge fan of, but just 7th, 8th, 9th guys to contribute minutes. That's what they're going to need. Uros Plavsic going pro from Tennessee. I wonder if he was sort of told to / they didn't really welcome him back because they were over the scholarship limit at this point, and they've got a lot of talented guys there they probably didn't want to send away. And Matt, we just kind of knew what Plavsic was, which was a mean, bad person, a bully. I don't know. I tweeted that everybody that is going to play against Tennessee is safer now because they are going to avoid his elbows and dirty plays. And I'm not going to miss him. Let's say that.
I'll miss him for the game, but yeah, as an enemy of his, certainly was he was a perfect villain. I actually thought he was pretty good, like useful and underutilized at times.
That was good too.
And sort of the like microcosm of everything that Tennessee was and why they were good last season. They'll still have plenty of get off the bus test guys, as we call them, next season. But I think Plavsic was the ultimate, like, oh my God, that guy's coming. Yeah.
Yeah, it was the start of the FAU game.
Role.
Right. Yeah. Kai started FAU game. He had like 3 straight half hooks because he's just huge. It was like, all right, well, I don't know what you do about that. And then they forgot about him and he threw an elbow into Vlad Golden's chest and got a technical. And all that stuff happened from there. Kevin McCullough returning to Kansas. This happened relatively recently before we started recording. Massive news. Joins Hunter Dickinson, Arterio Morris, all that. We're going to talk Kansas more later in this episode, so I won't belabor it now. But really, really huge to bring another veteran presence back. Although, Kai, it's another guy that can't shoot. And that team sorely lacks perimeter shooting right now. That's going to be a problem that needs to be addressed. In the SEC, Tolu Smith is back at Mississippi State. That forced Will McNair to transfer again since they already got Jimmy Bell. Matthew, Mississippi State looks like they're going to be cut from the same cloth next year. Just a brutish force in the paint.
I like this roster a lot. I think we talked about Andrew Taylor last episode. I took a little flyer on plus 1750 Hail Mary future. I think this team could be kind of really good next year.
On them to win the title?
175 to 1 is I think what you're trying to say.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Plus 1750. No,
just say 175
plus 17,000. Yeah, thank you.
175,000.
It's tough to say. What's the proper?
You say 175 to 1. I'm telling you. Just say that.
Yeah, that's right. 175 to 1.
Washington State lost Mohamed Gay. Matthew, is this going to hurt your ability to be high on Wazoo like you are every year?
Still like the roster, but Mo was kind of a force. Like, yeah, I can see why he's going pro. He actually has like legitimate perimeter skills, some touch, and could have been an absolute monster in the Pac-12 had he come back.
And then Kai Manny Bates leaving Butler. They had some other options. They kind of backfilled that spot almost in preparation for him to be gone. But now it's more like mid-major up transfers filling the center spot, not one of the best shot blockers in the entire country. So a bit of a downgrade for Butler there.
Major downgrade. He was so important for them.
Yep.
I'm not going to be fooled again by Butler. We talked about Big East episode.
Yeah.
You can't fool me
Butler.
Again.
Not huge on that roster next year.
Disaster.
Other random news and notes before we get into the Big 12 review. Scheduling stuff still worth mentioning. Wisconsin and Arizona are starting a home and home. And Matthew, I smiled at this because Frank Kaminsky just gave a little like laughing emoji quote tweet to it after he beat them in the Elite Eight twice in a row. Arizona fans were not pleased. I saw some people like, I'm glad we drafted Devin Booker, not you. And he's like, I played for the Suns for 3 years, you idiot. Right. Like we went to the finals. What are you talking about? But I'm just excited to rekindle that rivalry because there were some awesome games in the Elite Eight back in 2014 and 2015. The Gavitt Games matchups are set. Kai, we've got some solid matchups, no real home runs, partially because UConn is not involved, partially because it didn't seem like they paired the elites against the elites like Michigan State. One of the best Big Ten teams taking on Butler, Purdue, maybe the other best Big Ten team, assuming Edey's back, they're playing Xavier. The real bummer here is that we don't get Zach Edey versus Donovan Clingan, the Titan matchup to rule the world, mostly because UConn isn't in it this year, Kai. That's the big thing.
Yeah, it should be expanded. I don't know why we only do 8 matchups. Obviously, we could do as many as 11. So I think that's a real miss. Not having UConn is a real miss. Who knows when these are planned? Like, obviously, they're announced right now. I'm not sure if they're planned even more in advance. Maybe they're not. Just trying to put a little skepticism there. But yeah, none of these matchups really jump off the page, Jim. Iowa Creighton would have been fun this past year. Wisconsin Providence is not a fun one for me. Not at all.
That would have been the Luck Bowl back in 21-22.
Yeah,
that was the big one there. Matthew, how do you feel about the Hakeem Hart Bowl, Maryland and Villanova?
Ooh. I like both teams. The Terps were really good last year in the MTE format, were they not? So yeah, maybe they come out firing again this season.
We shall see.
Like Villanova this year?
I do like Nova
I like
as well.
Villanova
I like Villanova quite a bit.
Yeah. All right, boys.
Yeah,
there may be a board bet in the offing there for
believe
Nova.
in Kyle Neptune at your own peril. It's my new stance.
I think Neptune's good. I think he's solid.
Yeah, a year ago, Kai was like, Kyle Neptune is a god. But then Keith Ergo took over Fordham and they continued rolling.
I never called him a god. Thought he was good. Never called him a god.
Hyperbole for effect. Come on, Mr. McEwen. All right, that's it. That wraps up Roots Roundup. Let's get into the Big 12. This is our little recap series where we talk about how the team did this past year, how the program looks going forward, and we insert partial comments from our preseason preview, whether smart or bad. We are happy to dunk on ourselves. That's part of the process. The Big 12 is still the best league in the country by pretty much every objective measure, head and shoulders above per KenPom, again, because there was no bottom. The worst team in the entire league was Oklahoma. They got the 10th seed in the tournament, but they were still a top 60-ish team in KenPom, and they blew out Alabama in a conference challenge. 8 out of 10 in the top 50. Matt, you said on the preseason pod you thought this league would be a little bit down. Do you stand by that?
A little bit, yeah. I do. I think the middle was probably better than it was in 2022, but the top wasn't quite as. I mean, Texas got to a level where I think it was like terrifying, but Baylor, Kansas State, and to a lesser extent, Kansas, I think, Kyle, we were all a little bit hesitant on throughout the course of the latter part of the year. Would you agree with that or no? Am I reaching?
Well, I think you're kind of right. Obviously, there wasn't. It was not as elite at the top. 2 years ago, we had 3 top 10 teams, but everywhere else it was deep. Only 3 teams were outside the top 30 in this league in KenPom. Every single team top 65, 8 teams in top 50. It was still the best conference in America, and it wasn't really close, in my opinion.
Yeah, it was fantastic. 7 out of 10 teams. I think 70% of teams making the tournament is probably the highest in the entire country. I'd have to look into that a little bit, but I'm fairly confident that's the case. This was weirdly a down year in terms of postseason performance for the Big 12, most notably the first Final Four since 2017 with no Big 12 team, and the first national championship game since 2018 with no one from the Big 12. So a little bit shocking there. They did have 2 Elite 8 teams, but just not quite the same level. Kai, you did nail that the fact that they would have 7 teams in the tournament. So tip of the cap to you.
Hooray. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate it. Victory lap. You dum-dum said 6. I said 7. I am superior to both of you. Haha, Matthew.
We bow to Kai, Matthew. That's what we do here. How will the new teams fit in? That's the big question, Matt. We're going to discuss them later towards the end after we get through the top 10 in standings. But Houston, BYU, Cincinnati, UCF joining the league Your general take on how those programs fit in, just from a group perspective. You don't really have to go one by one. How do you feel about that group?
BYU in the Big 12 makes like negative sense to me. It's funny though. I've been the whole program in like school is like so into the move. I mean, for obvious reasons, right? But like, there's been a ton of local reports on the like Mark Pope has like a guy on his staff that's like really like scouting. He was like preparing for some of like the stylistic changes of the Big 12. Like they were like looking like a year or two in advance, getting ready for this season. So that's like a program I think this year that's going to be just fascinating to see how my stomach digests them in the Big 12 and then how well they actually do coming in first year. It seems like because they've been all in on investing for it and planning for it and prepping for all the idiosyncrasies that the league has to offer.
Yeah, the rich got richer. This is by far the best conference in the country this coming season. So you had Houston, who's been a top 5 team for 3-4 years in a row. Cincinnati and UCF were both top 50, 55 teams last year. So 13 of the 14 teams this season finished top 65 last year. And the one that didn't is BYU. That's been basically awesome under Pope besides last season. It's going to be insane. It's going to be an awesome league to watch.
The big bummer here is that it's been the bastion of double round robin. And we feel like, the standings are very true because of that. But now with 14 teams, there's going to be weird schedules. It's going to matter a lot for the regular season title. Like you're just not going to be able to say the same thing. Like if Kansas only plays Houston and Texas once and everybody else has tougher schedules, it's going to be a little bit asterisky, but man, what a league we have now. All right, let's move into team by team discussions here. I'm going to try to set the table quick and then mute myself because I'm telling you that the hammering outside my window is just ludicrously loud in my ears. I'm glad nobody is complaining about it in the chat, but that's stunning to me, Kai. We'll start with Kansas. We thought they would be the number 2 team in the Big 12. We all took Baylor over them. That turned out incorrect. How dare we bet against Bill Self? But they ended up getting a number 1 seed, did not make the second weekend. Rather shocking for Mr. Self. Kai, you kind of nailed it on the head with Jalen Wilson being the Big 12 player of the year. You said he was a very strong candidate for it. He ended up unanimous in that role.
Yeah, what a year.
So great step ahead by Jalen Wilson. And then we also just kind of praised Self for his ability to win with any kind of team. Last year, they abandoned post-ups completely, went heavy pick and roll, top 25 pick and roll frequency in the league or in the country. The previous year, they were bottom 100. Doesn't matter. Still a 1 seed. Matt, where do you stand on them going forward now with McCullough back? Are they the number 1 team? We've kind of had this mini debate between them and Duke. Where do you stand?
I think Duke's just better, but not by a lot. And I certainly trust the Bill Self factor, which somehow gets like continuously overlooked. I think now we're past that because he just has the title and it's everyone's mind. But yeah, I mean, the roster is really good. And I think it actually fits better than most people do. And man, I just like guys like KJ Adams and, DeJuan Harris, just like Kansas just gets guys that play intelligently and just kind of make the right play in their role. And those are just like absolute stars in their roles. And they have, Dickinson, who I think is like a wild card. Like, again, I don't even think this team is doomed if he like isn't that good. I just think there's actually options in how they can play and with guys they can bring in. And it's just Self as the guy who has he proved last year, as Shim mentioned, as he can do next year. His adaptability, his malleability with roster pieces is like second to none. So it's just kind of why you have to trust the institutional success at this point.
It's a top 3 team, in my opinion. Hunter Dickinson could be Big 12 Player of the Year, All-American. DeJuan Harris in his 3rd or 4th year at point. Say what you will about his lack of scoring prowess, but he does everything else right. He defends and he distributes. And hey, he shot 40% from 3 last year. He didn't shoot a whole lot. I'm not saying it looks really pretty when he does, but 40%, he's hitting those open threes when he gets the chance. So kudos to them. I really think they added some good pieces off the bench this season in the transfer portal with Morris, with Timberlake, with the trader Parker Brown coming in. So yes, this is a top 3 team for me, Jim. And of course, they're fine going forward for the future.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see Dickinson in this system. I've kind of razzed him in the past, but like Bill Self has proven to be one of the best coaches in the country at building an offense around a post player. Dickinson's one of the best 1v1. You like have to double him. The question, as we said, is shooting. And is there going to be enough spacing around him Timberlake's going to be massively important. Elmarco Jackson, the freshman, is going to be massively important because those guys can actually make shots. And as Kai alluded to, does Harris get a little bit more comfortable and higher volume from three? That would also be huge for them going forward.
Hey, how about Dickinson? 42% 3-point shooter, man.
Well, he can't space the floor around himself. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but throw KJ Adams down there, who's going to be incredible this season.
That was going to be great.
Plant my fat flag now.
Marco Jackson. Amazing. Why is no one talking about it? I feel like he's like going to be insane.
I don't know much about Kansas. Him. I've not looked at these freshmen yet.
Watch the tape. Watch the tape. I like.
He's good. He's good. I don't know that he's. We'll see. He needs to offer that perimeter pop. That's what they need.
This team needs depth. This team needs depth. They were very, very thin last year. That's my final take here. Self doesn't usually need big benches, but I think last year he was a guy short. Kind of showed in that Arkansas game late.
And Dickinson cleared out the bench depth from the big guys with Ejiofor and Uday leaving. Brown, I think, is a downgrade from those guys. He's solid, but he is a downgrade from Uday and Ejiofor in terms of upside. So we'll see. Again, program's in great hands, though. And Kansas, you rock. You're going to continue to be top 5. Texas up next. Really impressive season considering the off-court turmoil with Chris Beard getting dismissed. Finished second in the Big 12, top 5 in KenPom, made the Elite 8, just a bit away, like final 5 minutes against Miami away from making the Final 4. Matt, you were highest on this team. Tip of the cap to you.
Really
well done. I was very into the Jabari Rice breakout, Sir Jabari Rice, excuse me. But Kai, I didn't even mention the pump fake on the preseason preview. So did I really talk about Rice if I didn't mention the pump fake?
No, but I still give you credit, Jim. You mentioned him.
All right, perfect. Kai, how do we feel about this team? I know you just said, or you have mentioned here in our outline, that we were asked by Matthew if we thought they'd be better or worse than the prior year. We said about the same, but they were better. They're clearly better.
Well, they'll be worse this season than last year. I'm pretty comfortable saying that. Is Dylan Mitchell coming back? I guess that's a pretty big domino we're still waiting on.
He's still TBD, with the NBA draft.
Obviously important. Now getting Hunter back, getting Disu back, adding A. Smith, Caden Shedrick, some really good pieces here. And if Cunningham, you don't have to start him anymore, fantastic. Still not a huge fan of his. I just don't think Rodney Terry is an elite coach. And I think it's going to show this season. I think they will be overrated by most people.
Matthew, Texas?
I'm torn. I don't want to pile on the Rodney Terry pinata, but I do think you have to factor that in terms of outlook. The prognostications last season, they're kind of moot because the team went through such a weird pivot. But I think the point was the roster was always really exciting. And I think the core of that roster is mostly back for me, with Hunter and Disu. I mean, that's absolutely enormous. Ebring and Asmus, that's just a premier playmaking shot maker.
Carr. Is he better than Carr? Probably.
Yeah, I mean, does he? I know there's some defensive concerns there.
He's better.
Offensively,
he's better. Yeah, I mean, Carr was such a pit bull at the point of attack there defensively, along with Hunter, I guess, is really the main guy. But still, the roster is good enough for me, Jim, to feel excited about it. But I think they're kind of back in that 14 to 18 range where they finished 2 years ago. That's kind of more of the destiny of this team. I don't think it's a top 5 team.
Yep, I would agree there. There's some issues on the bench. Kai, I alluded to it earlier, but they've got depth pieces, but not bona fide key guys to come in there. Mm-hmm. They were really big mid-range last year. Pro Hoop Math, top 25 mid-range rate in the country. And Timmy Allen and Sir Jabari Rice and Marcus Carr were great in that range. I'm not sure that's going to be the same kind of thing this year with Hunter and TBD at small forward. But Matt's boy Disu is back, who Matt beat the drum for in the preseason, and he was outstanding. So yeah, I think they'll maintain solidness, but without being built by Chris Beard and without the same quite defensive foundation, I think they'll fall a little bit, not be a 2 seed, more like kind of the 6-7 seed that they were, the 6 seed in Beard's first year.
Yeah, I think Allen was highly underrated. Are you going to play Shedrick and Disu at the same time? I don't know if Terry wants to do that. Is the stuff we've heard about Shedrick off the court true? Does that come to fruition? Who knows? It might not be as big of an impact as it looks like on paper. So yeah, very TBD team.
Hey, we're real quick. Criminal offense, not to mention the number 1 O rating in the Big 12 last year. Kai, your boy Brock Cunningham back on this roster for another rodeo.
Was he number 1 O rating?
Number 1.
Hey, he's a solid
hyper efficient
role guy, I guess, but he's not. didn't he take like he took big shots in that Elite Eight game that he should not have been taking.
He's a perfect like polished garbage man, if that's an oxymoron, but it's
he's Trey Galloway,
hustle guy, kind of athletic, different, but yeah, it's similar type of impact. I agree.
He's a know your role all-star wing,
absolutely,
rather than a know your role big guy. Like he'll make the threes, 40% of the threes he gets, but he won't shoot many, and mostly stays out of the way. He's an okay defender, fights for an offensive rebound. Right. Exactly. You need 4 other good players for Brock Cunningham to play in the Big 12. That's
and Texas has them. In Texas, I agree. That's a good point.
That's true. Next up, Kansas State. Oh boy, fellas, good to get this one out of the way early because this was ugly. Just the sound bites from our preseason preview pod were
tough,
embarrassing, quite frankly. Like laughing at the roster, laughing at fans for thinking they were an NCAA tournament caliber team. Just all kinds of jabs. The only thing we got right was that we thought Jerome Tang would be a great long-term hire.
Yes.
It turns out he's a great short-term hire too. So we gotta wear this one, eat some crow.
Yeah, I guess 4 things. Number 1, Jerome Tang proved to be a top 10 coach in the country. You could even say higher. He did that good of a job. Number 2, Keontae Johnson played the entire year, and he played basically up to his previous caliber. We had doubts that he would even play that many games because of his insurance contract, because he's taken time off the court. So that was a big miss. Marquise Noel got better than last season. He was incredible. And then Tomlin, JUCO guys don't always work out. I think we said this in the preseason pod. We were skeptical of him being a star right away. Man, he was awesome. He was much better than I think we expected. You know, his counting stats maybe not jump off the page, but he truly was great in that role. So Matt, you got to apologize to K-State here. We recognize they were good, maybe a little bit too late last season. This coming year, I don't know. I'll probably be kind of lukewarm with them again, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I missed on Tang. I missed on Noel. I missed on Johnson, and I missed on Tomlin. I mean, those are their 4 basic. That's 95% of why K-State was good last year, right? Not to disrespect the role players, who, by the way, were very impressive in their own right. But I think back to Jim's point about Brock Cunningham, these guys are better than Brock Cunningham, but they needed the gravitational attention that, that Noel and Johnson provided, especially with how Tang orchestrated that with all the cutting and spacing. Man, I think just play it forward to this year, though. They got another guy in Tyler Perry coming in, who, I mean, is an absolute gem. I don't know how it's going to be. It's going to be hard for me to dislike a Tyler Perry led team. So I'll probably be in on K-State going forward. Let's just not to jump to the crystal ball, Kai.
Question in the chat. Can Tyler Perry be a sufficient Noel replacement? Yeah, I think he can be just as good as Marquise Noel, but there's no Keontae Johnson this year, presumably.
Well, that's the question. Is he going to go pro? Is he going to come back? He's waiting to get cleared by NBA doctors. That's a big part of it. The heart stuff. I think that was why Isaiah Austin was able to play in college, but not in the pros. Jared Butler had the same thing out of Baylor, where if he doesn't get cleared, I think he'll just come back, rack up NIL money, and be another All-American caliber duo with Perry. I think Perry can be that good if you give him the secondary weapon. Yep. If it's him and these role guys, then it looks a lot different. You need him to be bumped down a little bit. But Matt, this team was a top 10 against the spread team in the entire country last year. They covered 67% of their games. They're 8th in shot selection per shot quality, which I think speaks to how well Tang did of getting guys in the right positions. The right guys took the right shots. It wasn't like, oh, Desi Sills didn't have to step up and take 20% of their shots. They really leaned on the 2 stars, and they were able to get them the right positioning. Perry isn't the same player as Noel. He's not the same speed demon, brilliant passer like Noel is, but I trust Tang to figure it out, especially if Johnson's there.
Is K-State better this year? Let's say Keontae Johnson comes back. Yes. You're basically replacing Noel with Perry, and the supporting cast is mostly intact. And this team could definitely be better.
So basically, you're just saying swap Noel. Desi Sills, I think, also outperformed my expectations too.
Yeah, he was really good. He's good. I agree.
Yes, I think if Keontae Johnson's back, they'd be just as good. I don't think Masood was a big loss, in my opinion. Maybe that's
he had some huge shots in the tournament run, but
every time he got on the court, it's like, this guy doesn't look comfortable.
I mean, again, they were not a top 20 team by Ken Palm last year. It wasn't like they were, a juggernaut that rolled through. I still don't think they're a top 20 team, even with Perry and Johnson. I don't know. Maybe that's too hot to take. We'll see. Tang has kind of created an area where anything goes. Like they could be as good as he makes them. He's He's that fantastic on the sideline. Next up, 4 seed Baylor, team we were very, very high on in the preseason, guys. We all said they were better than Kansas.
Yeah, man.
Called them legitimate title contender, but it turned out the defense sucked. Matthew, I dug into the numbers. They were dead last in the country in field goal percentage allowed at the rim. Dead last. Like I thought Thombo would at least put up a fight when Chama Chachua got on the court. I thought he'd help. I think they gave up a lot of straight line drives because their guards weren't very good. But even with that, just no rim protection at all. Defense was really, really bad. They couldn't figure it out. Totally undermined the backcourt that was as good as we advertised. They were top 5 offense in the country, but if you can't get stops, you can't advance, and they crashed out early.
Yeah, I mean, and on the other end, no rim pressure on offense at all. I mean, like this team was completely jump shot reliant on offense.
Dead last in rim frequency also.
Yep. So it just was a team that if you're going to be like the creme de la creme, you have to have like an interior reliable source of offense, whether it's on the glass, getting second chance opportunities, like Houston, whether it's, in transition or playing through your bigs, like it's, Gonzaga or Arizona. None of that for Baylor last year, just completely sold out toward the perimeter. And while it was fun to watch shot making at times, the defense wilted pretty frequently. And I think the injuries and lack of depth also did play a part to a point there, but still there was just no resistance up front on either end. Yeah.
On paper going forward, doesn't look that great roster wise, but you will not see me doubting Scott Drew. I have full confidence that he will figure it out and make this team a top 20 team once again this upcoming season.
Yeah, really young in the backcourt. It looks like that's going to be part of their issue. And the front court, there's still not a lot of offensive pop. That's still going to be an issue for them. Kai, how much did losing Tang cut into the brilliance of Scott Drew and the staff? That's kind of the question we have to at least ponder.
Absolutely could have. Yeah, he was there 20 years. He was there lockstep with Scott Drew, I think, since he took the position. So yes, that could be a real thing. And Baylor was still number 16 in KenPom last season and number 2 in offense. But sure, maybe their norm is now a top 20-ish, top 15-ish team instead of what we saw the previous couple of years. They're a bona fide top 5 team year in, year out.
Yeah, it's like Kansas State was 75 shots better on defense than Baylor was. And I don't know if the personnel is like egregiously better for Kansas State. K-State had a 5'8" point guard and no real like true rim protection either, besides Tomlin is bouncy, but I don't know, Matt. Where do you land on the Tang departing and how much does that hurt Baylor's upside going forward?
Yeah, I think it could be real, but I also don't want to overreact to last year. Like I think we over criticized Baylor to a point. Like if you really break down how their season unfolded, once they got our guy Cha back, like went on kind of that win streak and they dropped a couple of, one or a few of their losses were very excusable, right? Lost to Texas, lost to Kansas, lost to K-State. And then you get the Keontae George injury coinciding when Bonner came back. Like they were close to getting in full gear, but then something hit them at a bad time, right? As you felt like it was maybe coming together. So I lost to Creighton in the tournament by, Creighton was a good team. Point being, last year was in no way a calamity. I think it was over ridiculed now that I've kind of Monday morning quarterback to Kai.
No, well, like I said, I think calling them a top 15-ish, top 20-ish team now going forward is my questions. Like, is this their level versus top 5 national title contender, Kansas level type of team that we made them out to be in the preseason? I think for good reason still. But now you have to reassess. And to Jim's point, Tang might have been a huge part of that.
Yeah.
And we overlooked some stuff.
Yeah, they just really couldn't handle the physicality athleticism combo. Like the triple sweep by Iowa State was very eyebrow raising.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh wow, they just can't handle that type of team that was able to take the ball away from them a little bit. They didn't have a true point guard last year, so their turnover rate was surprisingly high for a team with that elite of an offense. It really was just predicated on incredible shot making and some garbage men getting them second shots fairly frequently. Still in good shape going forward, but TBD if it's elite shape without Tang there hand in hand with Scott Drew. Iowa State, they're next. Little transition there, having a team that completely owned Baylor, beat them the last game of the regular season, beat them in the Big 12 tournament, really did own them, to be perfectly honest. Them. The defense was fantastic. Once again, Kai, something that we were very on and into in the preseason with an elite rim protection combo. We didn't know they would turn teams over the same way, but Tam and Lipsey stepped up really on both sides of the ball, Kai. That plus Gabe Kalsher making shots. elevated the offense, kept the defense stable, and this team was another rock solid NCAA tournament squad.
Yeah, this is the second time in a row Otzelberger is completely blown away expectations. We went into last year with a little more openness to them being good again. I think we were burned like we were this year on K-State by their success 2 seasons ago, and we were a little bit more careful. But still outperformed my expectations. Again, Lipsey, Jim mentioned, we had questions on their point guard play heading into last year, and Lipsey, a freshman who, frankly, it wasn't really on my radar. He was awesome. And again, he wasn't putting up major stats, but he was so rock solid and defensively, just an absolute bulldog on the ball. And that's really what launched them, Matt, into their success. Their defense was just awesome again. So yeah, this season's probably going to be more of the same. They have a lot of interesting guys coming back in their front court. So they should be great defensively once again. We'll see if they can get offensive production.
Yeah, it's an interesting, kind of a different recipe to look at the roster next year. Like, you got to have 2 top 50 freshmen presumably start. They were top 5 in just D1 experience last year. I tend to think that matters for defense, like older guys buy in, understanding concepts, the things that ultimately, that holds to heart there. So yeah, well, maybe it's more of a balanced team next year. It's going to be kind of a wild card type of year. Like, I think if it had more of like the transfer veteran heavy presence on the roster, I'd like, okay, yeah, more of the same. But I think with the way the roster is constructed, it's actually like a little more volatile because of the youth. It is still a young team. You have 2 sophomores at guard, the 2 freshmen there in the front court. So yeah, it's a young team for sure.
Yeah, I said this last year where I didn't think they'd be able to force the same level of turnovers, but next year, like if they're playing Pavletsky a lot, the Wofford point guard who I love, but he's not the same kind of defender, not somebody you think fits in this Otzelberger kind of system. That's a question for me, but I think the offense will be better, and they're really, they've got a little more shot making than they've had in the past, a little more offensive zip to them. Kai, do you think there's anything to the fact that they are 17-22 against Big 12 competition and like 23-4 against non-Big 12 competition? I almost feel like that style is just like a whoa in the non-con, and when you game plan for it, it's a little different.
I think it is. Yeah, I think it's tougher to plan for. Well, I think it's tougher to play in a non-conference setting when you have less time to prep for it. You're not used to seeing it because they play so hard. And that's really seeing them against Villanova in the PK 85. When Villanova Iowa State beat Villanova, but we thought Villanova that time was way better than Iowa State. Iowa State just punched them in the mouth. It was not that they were the better team skill-wise. They just outworked them, and it was obvious. And that was the case throughout the entire tournament. So I think there's definitely a case for that, and they'll probably start hot again next season. It's very hard to believe this team being better than last season based on roster construction at the current state, but they're probably going to be solid.
Yeah, their non-conference losses last year were UConn, who whooped everybody in non-conference, literally went undefeated straight up and against the spread in non-con games. And then at Iowa, and Iowa versus Iowa City, Cyhawk, the home team always blows out the other team. It feels like annual tradition there. But Matt, going forward, good shape. You think Iowa State's going to be consistent? Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I just think good coach. Every year, I think there's at least some plan on what the roster is supposed to do, and I think there's an identity with how he's trying to do it. So yeah, I'm very in on the new clone era.
Yep. TCU up next. They were 3rd in Rob Doster's preseason rankings, which we discussed as from the Almanac. We were using those for our preseason preview pod. We all thought that was a little aggressive. Kai, I almost talked myself into 3rd. Didn't quite get there, but you were closer. You said 5th. They did finish 6th, technically, in terms of the Big 12 seedings.
Oh, no.
So being low was probably correct. The one thing you highlighted on the preseason pod and probably should have been, seen coming from a mile away was that the shooting was terrible. Just a bad 3-point shooting team, 341st in shot making per shot quality, kind of just poor from everywhere. I was hoping Shahade Wells would help out. He was a contributor, but he shot 25% from 3. Mike Miles started to make shots, 36% from beyond the arc. He actually really gave them what they needed there, but just didn't have the wing shooting. But a tip of the cap goes to Jamie Dixon for cranking up the speed, the tempo. They led the entire country in transition points. I think that's a good sign that your coach can adjust to your style and your roster and make a tweak like that.
Yeah, I think we kind of saw Wes Miller make we'll get to him later. A little Cincinnati Big 12 talk, still wild to me. If your offense doesn't have like a stable of shot making and scoring, like use your speed to get up and down and score faster with against a not set defense. So yeah, TCU, Dixon, just in on him as the program general. Kai, roster next year is like, okay, the whole wing corps, they're all back pretty much, but then you're doing like a reverse a topsy-turvy at the guard position, losing Miles, and you bring in Jameer Nelson, Avery Anderson. I don't like relying on injury risk guards. It's been kind of a peril to the Dixon rosters the last couple of years. It's what's kind of halted their jump. But I mean, it's hard to knock what he's done at TCU. Let's all remember what we're talking about here. It's TCU basketball.
Yeah, it's an incredible job. And I think, if I'm going to be completely honest here, Mike Miles being out for 5 games in the Big 12 was the main reason they finished 5th or 6th, right? They were 1-4 without him in Big 12 play. And that kind of scares you, I think, going forward without him, because I think Jameer Nelson and Avery Anderson is a huge downgrade from their previous backcourt. Still can't shoot. In fact, I think you got worse at shooting by replacing Miles with Nelson, and Anderson we know can't really shoot. Defensively, still going to be really tough. And again, Jamie Dixon is a great coach. But yeah, I don't see them being any better, Jim.
Yeah, they're going to need Tennyson to play and to give them backcourt shooting, but I don't know that he keeps up the same defensive mindset that they have. That was kind of their calling card, the physicality and really the speed. I think they'll still score in transition, but that half court offense is going to be like pulling teeth next year. Mm-hmm. It's just going to be brute force. Can we club our way to some offensive boards and putbacks? And they had so many like cuts where there was no spacing, but they were still able to thread some interior passing. It was impressive to watch, but the spacing is just not going to be good again, Matt. In terms of a short-term outlook, it'll be solid, not great, but man, under Dixon, they're going to be so much more competitive than they were in the past. I think you just keep him there as long as he wants to stay there.
Yeah, Nelson, Anderson stay healthy. Good things are going to happen this year. That's for sure.
Yep. Next up, Oklahoma State, kind of the most like, yep, they were awesome on defense and terrible on offense, and that's kind of what we expected. It wasn't quite good enough to make the tournament. Musa Cisse missing a couple games didn't really help that much. We were higher than the general consensus, Kai, but they kind of landed where you'd expect them to, just right outside the bubble picture. Didn't quite get enough wins to get over the hump, but super competitive and tough to play against.
Yeah, and Avery Anderson missed last month or so, and we just talked about him on TCU, but he was a key part of Oklahoma State's team last season and part of their great defense. Yep, it sucks. It sucks for Mike Boynton, because we were really rooting for them to make the tournament after they were, maybe incorrectly suspended for the previous season's tournament.
Stupid ban.
Definitely incorrectly suspended for the preseason tournament. Again, like I said in the preseason podcast, Boynton's players love him. I think he's a really solid coach. He just has not really proven it offensively quite yet. And going forward, I'm not really sure it's going to be any different this coming year.
Yeah, I'm just looking at, they actually didn't like play a whole lot worse without Avery Anderson. It was kind of, people sort of wrote them off after that because their offense was never good. And then without him, what chance does it have? He just kind of has that ability every year, Boynton, just with the guys he recruits and the way he coaches. They're always going to be competitive. I think it's kind of a high stable floor situation, but like the offense is going to leave you a little bit to be desired. So it's sort of a rinse, wash, repeat narrative, Jim, not to sugarcoat it, but that's where I'm at with this team program.
Yep.
Boynton
didn't get the offensive leaps they needed from Bryce Thompson, especially. I think it was the high pedigree guy that they were hoping could really take a jump, and he just remained solid but unspectacular. Didn't even shoot 40% from the field. That's kind of a problem. Going to be really veteran in the backcourt next year. Maybe that helps. Brought in a couple of pieces from the portal to give depth, but I think it's going to be more the same, kind of that 30 to 50 range, competitive, maybe on the bubble, but not quite breaking through into the upper tier of this conference, especially as it gets stronger and that middle tier gets even bigger.
Boy, bringing in two A-Sun guys, Jim. How about that? The fifth most efficient conference in the country, going to play for defensive Oklahoma State.
I know, replacing Boone and Cisse. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but one of them is from Jacksonville, Kai, who we know does not fashion themselves a real A-Sun team. They're more brutish up front. Matt, let's talk West Virginia, because you were spot on that this team was good, but how good? It was a weird year. They were a top 20 KenPom team, but they went 7-11 in league play, got the 8 seed in the tournament. Really not that great in terms of a win-loss output. They were much better offensively than defensively, which I think is a little bit surprising for us. It's a big it's been an odd transition to see Huggins kind of embrace the portal and bring in different guys that maybe didn't necessarily fit theoretically, like the Trey Mitchell, Joe Toussaint, and now I guess last year Eric Stevenson, and now a couple guys this year with Kriisa. It's kind of working, Matt, but he's suspended to start the year because of his radio interview. And how much longer does Mr. Huggins have in the tank? I guess pat yourself on the back for being the highest on them, and then tell me about going forward with Westphal.
I mean, Huggins is a good coach. Like he's the chameleon of college basketball coaches, right? We've seen him pivot multiple times in his career. I think that's what he does best. And like just the kind of bar he's set there since 2015 is, I mean, outside of 2019 and 2022, and this team's been really good, including like 2 separate 4-year top 15 like clockwork runs. And I know the analytic numbers painted them as a top 20 team last year, despite kind of their inconsistency, Kai. But like, I think
it's weird.
That's why I think the bar with Huggins will stay high for the next few years. I know it sort of seems like he's kind of off his rocker and losing it, but I mean, well, I don't love his transfer gets. I think he's betting on talent to a degree and then hoping he can be the general in the room that brings these clash of characters together, because it certainly could be I could see a Hard Knocks West Virginia being like a really entertaining spinoff if they decided to do a college basketball bit this year. Some personalities in that locker room this year, Kai.
Really strange team last year. They were top 20 in KenPom, but they were 17-17 against the spread. They only beat one top 25 KenPom team. So it was like is this team really that good? I think they were overrated in the analytics, which is tough to say because it's analytics. But if you kind of
blew out teams, they blew out bad teams. Like
every single season, West Virginia is tough to pick. They did. That's pretty much. But here are the last 5 seasons. Preseason 11 finished 95th. Preseason 55 finished 10th. Preseason 8 finished 23rd. Preseason 46 finished 66th. Last year, preseason 73 finished 19th. You can just guarantee whatever place Huggins is put in the preseason, he's going to completely finish away from it, whether it's exceeding or not exceeding expectations. This team was better than I thought. I did think they'd bounce back a little bit, but not to the extent in terms of being a top 20 team. Eric Stevenson, man, number 5 in KenPom Player of the Year in the Big 12 Conference, and we gave him some crap on the preseason pod, and he had his best season he's had in college.
Led by me giving him crap. I still stubbornly don't think he's that awesome, but he had a really good year. Statistically, I have no leg to stand on. High usage, fairly high efficiency for them last year. They beat Pitt by 25. They beat Florida by 29. They beat Penn by 34. Like those kind of games really elevate you from an analytic point of view. And they never got blown out. Like even in the Big 12, their losses, I guess at Texas, they lost by 35, but they were very competitive. And I think that really helped elevate the analytical floor and the way that was seen out of them. But Matt, Jesse Edwards, great interior defender. They're still in the mix. They're hosting Olivier Kamwa this weekend, I believe, for transfer potential get there too. They're going to be really solid again. And I'm going to probably acquiesce to your West Virginia love next year.
What a weird roster. It's the weirdest roster in the country.
Here's a take. It might be his most talented roster he's had in like 10 years. Which
Kriisa,
sounds ridiculous,
Edwards,
but like
Perez, Mitchell, Toussaint, those don't fit together. These are just a bunch of guys.
That's what I'm saying.
It's going to be guys.
They're all good.
They're all good.
Good team.
That's what I'm saying. This needs to be a Hard Knocks thing. This is the Hard Knocks team this year in college basketball for sure.
Let's get it. Yeah, pay the players a little bit of NIL money to have cameras in there.
They got tons.
Huggy Bear would be super entertaining as the guy on the sideline screaming at him.
According to our guy Trilly, they're loaded in the vault. So,
hey, shout out Trilly. Hope you're enjoying the podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
King.
All right, a couple more to get to, and then we'll quick run through the non-Big 12 teams that are joining the fold. Texas Tech. Oh boy, the wheels fell off for the Red Raiders last year. Kai was, the one beating the drum for them most in the preseason, but we all didn't think 9th was really in the realm of possibility. I don't think even Matt's pessimism got down to that level. Mark Adams off the court stuff certainly did not help. The big thing was, and Matt, I said it on the preseason pod, was Adams didn't have that long of a track record to where we should have like auto penciled him in to top 5.
Yeah.
And the shocking part was that the defense completely fell off. Going down to 66 was really shocking.
It was. They played better late, right? Like you kind of look at what they did when they got healthier. I'm sure Kyle talked about that. Maybe if we just look at that snapshot and say, okay, that was the team extrapolated for the entire year. This is probably just a solid, been slightly down year, but it feels like it was a calamity. I don't know, Kai. I still believe in Obviously like what this program has going, when you bring in Grant McCasland, like, and the money they have, I think Texas Tech fans are just absolutely thrilled about where they are right now, given what transpired to where they are right now.
Not thrilled?
No, I think they're thrilled. You have Grant McCasland in the wake of that disaster last year. Just like it's a breath of fresh air and you're immediately good and you actually have high upside. It's just an awesome development for you.
Yeah. Listen, I'll make an excuse and say AMAC was hurt majority of the year and they're a lot better within the lineup, but I'm still way off. I thought it'd be a top 5 defense, like Jim said, 66th. I do think Matt said he could see them finishing last in the Big 12. I think he said that he could see the bottom falling out.
Wow.
So I'm going to give him a little bit of credit there. Jim was properly skeptical, but Grant McCasland rights all wrongs. I think the defense goes back up this season. We'll see. I'm not sure I'm a Pop Isaacs guy, Jim. He was a freshman last year, so I'm going to give him a little bit of a pass. Never felt comfortable with him really with the ball. Davian Harmon was incredible last season, and Isaacs was hurt a lot, so maybe it's another caveat there. Roster doesn't look great on paper, but McCasland I trust pretty much with anything.
Yeah, it's just going to be tough for him. This is one of those tests where a coach we absolutely love who elevates a mid-major program, then you go into a higher level where you've got to compete with just constant high talent all the time, whether he's going to be able to recreate that like slow down, grind you out style, or does he have to alter that, play a little faster to attract better players? I'm curious to see what McCasland does here. Matt, I'm laughing at you, saying like, Texas Tech fans have to be thrilled. Like a year ago, they were like, you wouldn't shut up about how good Mark Adams was.
Right.
And now like, haha, we got the better end after Beard left. Suck it. We've got Mark Adams. And now it's like a year later talking themselves into a completely different coach.
I guess they'd be thrilled every time this year or every year this time. So I actually like the pickups he got. There's not a ton of like bona fide scoring. It's going to be kind of like a by committee patch together, but
gross.
Like all the guys he got, it's like, I kind of like that guy. Like Darian Williams, Nevada, he was a really good player. He's a big piece of why Nevada was good last year. It's like, okay, Texas Tech, do I love it as much?
And Warren Washington, like the defense is going to be really solid. I think they're going to guard people. They're going to be long, but producing points, I think, could be a bit of a struggle for the Red Raiders. But hey, that's nothing new. All right, bottom of the Big 12 standings was Oklahoma. Team we were all fairly lukewarm on, just didn't see how the roster fit, weren't fan of the Bamisile plus Sheffield matchup, or Sherfield, match in the background or backcourt. That didn't work out well. Moser just seems like a guy that wants to build internally, and slowly but surely his defense improves as they gain the concepts and get more comfortable with them. That's not really going to happen in the NIL era, Kai. Those team was last. We trust and like the coach, but I don't know. Where do you see this like long-term outlook for the Sooners?
Not great. The program's going downhill. This was their worst season since 2012. He has not made the tournament. Porter in 2 seasons. They're 12-24 in the Big 12. And he just can't get talent. And it's a shame. I do think Porter's a great coach because, frankly, they outperformed what they should have last season with the talent they had. But this year's roster is bleak. He lost your most important players from a season ago, basically all of them. And I don't think Porter's long for this job, unfortunately.
Well, if you trust the rumors, he didn't want to be there anymore, right? He wanted to go to Notre Dame, but the buyout was crazy.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, he's making a lot of money. Good for him. But yeah.
Matthew, Oklahoma, where you at?
In my gut of guts, I always felt like this job was never a job that Moser really wanted, as you guys talked about. It was just like a too big of a payday to pass up for him and his family. Good for him. Jim, what he is, he's the guy in tic-tac-toe who always lets the other guy go first. Like his talent it's never been up to snuff for Big 12, but he's competed pretty close to a Big 12 level, like, in that kind of scrappy dog type of execution way. But you can kind of see some of the leakage last year, right? Like, okay, if your talent's going to really be that below par, you just have an uphill battle to climb. So there's just, with the way he coaches, the way they play, it'll never be terrible. But yeah, the upside, the ceiling is awfully low, it feels like.
And they daddied Alabama. That tells you how good of a coach.
Yeah.
They
beat him by 30 points. So the team is a number 1 overall seed in the NCAA tournament. Speaking of Alabama, Kai, how do we feel about Oklahoma as an SEC team? It won't be next year, but does that change your outlook in terms of Moser? I kind of say no, because it seems like the SEC is the most NIL secure league in the country. And that's going to be tough to deal with.
Yeah, middle bottom tier SEC. They're going to be floating in the Ole Miss category, I think, for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I love Moser, but I don't know the style fits really with the school and the players that he's going to get. It's not really a power conference style. We'll see. Maybe he'll develop a little bit more internal continuity, but it's going to be really, really tough in this era. All right, bonus section here. We're talking the 4 new Big 12 teams. Welcome to Houston, Cincinnati, UCF, and BYU. Starting with Houston, Kai, they had a terrific year. Top 5 in the country pretty much all season. Kelvin Sampson flirted with the Milwaukee Bucks over the past week or two, but he's back officially, not in the running there anymore. No Traymon Mark went to the portal. No Sasser, he went pro. But I still love this roster, man. Jamal Shed as the floor general. A couple of great portal ads with Dunn, with Cryer. They're going to be fantastic in the front court. Big time change going to the Big 12 and not the big fish, little pond of the American, but we don't really have any reservations about Houston, right?
I don't care who's on the roster. They're going to be awesome. That's Kelvin Sampson, best coach in the country. Boom. Done. They're going to be awesome. Top 10 team.
Matthias? I
agree. Another, who's that guy? Big guy who will probably start for them this year, Jim. I'm looking at Javier Francis. I feel like we said this about Jerron Brooks a year back. And there's always a guy who played 2 minutes the year before who just comes in and plays 15 to 20, just dominant garbage bin minutes, and they got some depth up front. And I like that there's at least an infusion of offensive upside with Cryer. So, and Arsenault is going to be an absolute start. Yeah, and Dunn too. So,
yeah, Dunn actually made 3s last year. He wasn't just a driving, get to the free throw line kind of guy. I love that fit. A lot of length. Cryer will hopefully have his defensive shortcomings covered up by Dunn and Arsenault and Shed. If he's the only weak defender in the backcourt, then it kind of works out. Whereas at Baylor, it seemed like everybody was a little bit shaky on the perimeter. They're going to be long. They're going to play hard. They challenge threes as well as any team in the country. Once again, second nationally in 3-point percentage defense. They have found a way to make that sustainable, even if most statistical studies say it's not. They're just long and figure out how to make those shots difficult all the time. I love Houston. I think they're going to be fantastic again next season. Next up, Cincinnati. The build is slowly but surely happening, I think, under Wes Miller. If you guys had told me that Cincinnati finished 50th in KenPom last year, I'd be shocked. I would have guessed 70th or something like that. But they crept up there. They won 23 games, figured things out. I mean, pretty balanced, Matt. But Miller, I think, is just tinkering, trying to find his way at this level. It was the same thing at Greensboro. He had 3 or 4 seasons where they were shaky, and then suddenly they became an annual juggernaut. It feels like Cincinnati might be trending that way. Maybe not juggernaut status, but I think they're going to get better and better. And the ads for this offseason portal look solid.
Yeah, he feels like a builder long term, which I don't really believe is an approach that can be successful in this day and age. But just by circumstantial timeline, that is kind of coming to fruition with, I think, the roster he brings in next year, which is really intriguing by my eye, Kai.
You love your boy Precocious Lacocious.
That's right. Running the quasi point guard, CJ Frederick, if he can stay healthy, absolute sniper. Don't know anything about this top 5 JUCO kid. I assume he'll be pretty good. And then their bigs, Kai, the bigs. If Aziz gets healthy, the Duke.
Well, if he can play.
If he can play, sorry. Yeah, if he can get the waiver. So we'll see where he falls in the NCAA. But yeah, him and Reynolds and Locken. I mean, that's a big time front court, and Newman's the heart and soul of the team. I like the roster a lot next year. I think it's a top 50 team again if they're all there.
Yeah, it's an interesting team. I don't think it's a tournament team, but they could be top 50 again. It's a solid team, but they're in the Big 12 now. I think this transition for them will be, and UCF will be really hard. I think BYU and Houston will handle it. I don't think the other two will succeed right away.
I think Cincinnati's in better shape than BYU.
I think they're built. Yeah, I think they're both ready, actually.
Just a fantastic coach.
I think the BYU home court factor is going to be huge for them. I think that's the big neutralizer. They can win 6-7 games. Yeah.
Well, I got that highlighted in the outline when we get to BYU. But yeah, I mean, Cincinnati sustained a high level in the old Big East at one point when it was really elite. Cronin won 78 games in 3 years. In the last 3 years, they were in the Big East. So it's possible for the program to get to that level. But I don't know. The BYU question, let's just go to BYU. We'll talk UCF last because we're already infringing on it. Matt, as you mentioned, that home court's going to be ridiculous. They're the only team in the Mountain Time Zone. They're at elevation. Crowd is rabid. It's going to be really, really tough for teams to go there. Now, the other hand, Matthias, how do you feel about them having to go on the road a lot? Like those road trips to West Virginia and UCF, that's going to be difficult for them. All the ones down into Texas. But you feel like you're probably going to get, if you're playing 20 conference games, 10 of them at home, you're going to get at least 8 at home, like every year, right?
Yeah. And you're right. The road thing's interesting. I think BYU is a little bit better. They played more like a national brand of schedule recently just because of how their program's ascended. So I think they'll be a little bit more equipped to handle that. But you're right. The home court thing will be huge. It's like the teams going to these new sites that are just like geographically odd and off the beaten path in the middle of the conference year. I think that's going to be a huge kind of a wake up call. And we saw how much home court meant in like the Big Ten last year, and the Big 12 is always, a pretty strong lead. But like you have familiarity with like going to Norman and going to Stillwater if you play for Kansas, but like going to Provo, Kai, just different.
Yes, you can do very well there.
Do very well there. You could.
I think they're going to be really good. Really, really good. Traore is going to be awesome. Third year of college, was already a stud. They have a ton of shooting. They have a rising sophomore point guard in Hall, who I'm a fan of, or at least I believe that he can improve. And I think he did a great job in the portal, Pope, with Khalifa, one of the best passing big men in the country, and Baker and Glover. Again, 2 more shooters that come in and just give you spacing. It's going to be a great shooting team. And again, it's one of the best coach teams, I think, in the country. One of them, top 25-ish coaching wise.
Yeah, not having Trevin Nell last year, I think actually hurt him. Just a little more wing depth, perimeter sniping. The backcourt didn't get sorted. They didn't figure out that Hall was like the guy at point guard until later in the year. And by that time, maybe it was a little bit too late. Matt, I have a trivia question for you. You ready?
I'm ready.
How many tournament games has BYU won in the last 25 years? NCAA tournament games.
3. It's not very many, right?
3 is correct. Now, if you take out Jimmer Fredette, how many have they won?
1?
0.
Pope hasn't. Kai, I was going to say, I think we should talk about the Mark Pope. There's a dark side to the Mark Pope narrative.
He's made one tournament with BYU.
That's a problem. I mean,
he missed out
his best chance in 2020.
He's made 2.
Sure.
In 2020, it didn't count, right?
My point is, we love him. We shower praise on him. I think there is real clout to the opposite side of the aisle. That's
you called him the best coach. You called him the best coach in the country 2 years ago.
I did. I don't know if he's best. He's really good. He's still top 10.
Yeah. Madsen elevating that Utah Valley program after Pope, I think, was eye-opening. And then, this last year was really, really up and down. Last 2 years really have been up and down. Like Santa Clara has been better the last 2 years, which is, I'm curious how they fare in the Big 12.
His first 2 years of BYU, just like inarguably incredible.
But could you say a lot of that was Dave Rose leaving this awesome group of guards behind, and some of that experience? We'll see. He hasn't made the tournament with his players yet. That's
fair.
Rose did not win with that group, so I don't know.
Yeah, Rose didn't win without Jimmer Fredette. That was, like I said, the only tournament wins they had in the last quarter century. Is rather surprising.
It'll be an interesting season, I think. Curious to see how it unfolds.
Yeah, like the only team coming from the West Coast to the Big 12, whereas we have 3 teams that are a little more East Central from the American. Last one is UCF, Matt, coached by Johnny Dawkins. I'm going to go to you first because you are a Duke lover. They did have the second best year of the Ken Palm era last year, so they enter with a little bit of momentum. Maybe not as obvious for everybody, but the big stat I want to mention with them, they're turning the roster again completely. So last year they were 334th in minutes continuity, so carryover from 22, and right now they're 336th in returning minutes because of transfers, Hendricks going pro, graduation hitting them hard. Like, this is a completely new team once again. So I don't really know how much the last year's momentum matters. Where do you land with UCF entering the Big 12?
I mean, last year was all about Taylor Hendricks for me, like just being in awe of what that guy could do. And so I just feel like kind of a bummer that you didn't parlay that into a tournament appearance. I mean, I think statistically they actually weren't far off from being tournament caliber, but 8-10, the AAC is not going to get you anywhere. The guys they did bring back though, Kai, are all like really, really strong defensively. So I think that will help them play up potentially in like a scrappy, dog against the better, more talent rich teams. Transfers kind of feel very American-y and not Big 12-y to me, a lot of quantity, not a lot of quality. And Johnny Dawkins isn't like some wizard coach. I think he's just had a good eye for talent in an opportunistic fashion. So we'll see how it plays out. I think they'll be the worst team in this league, but not by a substantial margin.
I'd be shocked if they were not last place in the Big 12 this coming year.
I think they're last, but I don't think it's a 3-game.
I think Dawkins is the worst coach by a margin, and I think the roster's not great. I don't think Jaquan Walton's getting a waiver. If he does, then everyone in the country should get a waiver. I would be I'd be shocked if they don't finish last in the Big 12.
I'll say that I'll be shocked if they're not bottom 2, just because I feel like every year, Kai, there's a team that gets wrecked by injuries that could end up
assuming all healthy, barring injury stuff. Yes.
Yeah, it's every year. That's why I want to give you that out, and they can finish 13th instead of just.
He's finished outside the top 100 in KenPom for the last 6 seasons. I don't think any Big 12 team has done that.
Yeah.
Period.
The ceiling, the range for this program's outcomes has been pretty much between like 10th and 9th in the Big 12. That's like the only outcomes that they could have had the last couple decades or last 5 to 7 years.
Where did Hendricks come from? Why did we just completely miss him? I mean, he was insane.
He was like a top 60 recruit. The recruiting services, I think, missed him too. Just like how versatile and the shot making at his size. It's just ridiculous. His brother is apparently not anywhere near the same level player that redshirted last year. Yeah. All right, that's it. That wraps up the Big 12, guys. Any other final thoughts? I mean, I know this is going to be a 1 year of this 14-teamer before Texas and Oklahoma move on to the SEC, but boy, it's going to be competitive. And could you see 9, 10 teams making the NCAA tournament out of this group?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Big 10 gets it. It's going to be a better league than the Big 10, I think. And we're talking 14 teams, top to bottom. I'll say 9, but I can see 9 or 10. And thank goodness they're getting back to 12 after. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, the Big 12 having 12
shrink conferences.
We're going to love that. Just the actual numeric symmetry between the name and the actual quantity of teams.
Yeah. Life on the road will not be kind to those 2 defectors. Good luck to you. Just going to be get the absolute A effort from every opposing student section this year.
Yep. It's going to be brutal. All right, that's it. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to the Big 12 recap. We'll be back next week. I think we're going to go with potentially a Thursday show and talk NBA draft deadline, but we could also end up deciding to go Pac-12 or SEC recap. We'll keep you posted. Thank you for tuning in. Catch you next week.